My name is Nickel, and if you guys haven't watched the most recent episode in this series where we looked at how strong Genji was each season, you should check that out because this is the next hero in that series, taking a look at how strong Hanzo was every season. And luckily we have our resident expert on hand, Jonal, who is a very high-ranking DPS player in Overwatch and has a pretty deep understanding of what the meta was like every season. So don't forget to subscribe to him down below in the description, drop a thumbs up on this video, and leave a comment with which hero you'd like to see a video like this for next.
Thank you for the beautiful and lovely introduction, as always, Nickel, and my name is Jonal. Today, let's talk about Hanzo, how he's been both in the competitive scene as a solo queue hero, that how he works in ranked, and also how his history with pro teams have been throughout the different metas, throughout the different balance patches, and so on. So, with no further ado, let's just start. In season 1, I won't bring up any pro gameplay or anything like that, just because it was a wild west back then when you could pick as many of one hero as you wanted. So we saw like double bastion stuff and so on, and therefore I will not mention Hanzo in the context of pro game. I do remember that back then he was talked a lot about as a bad hero. A lot of people did not like him just because it felt like he didn't have the skill. It was a spammy hero, it was a very inconsistent hero, and therefore a lot of people didn't like him. But then again, this was also when the game was so fresh, the people were still finding out where heroes were laying. However, he did get a nerf back then. Reduced the chance for larger projectiles, for example Hanzo's arrow, to hit targets around corners. And you might sound, oh well, that sounds like a hit registration or something similar, like something with a ping or something like that, so you just don't die around corners. But that's actually not the case. What it was that Hanzo back in the day was in the forefront of how projectiles were built into Overwatch. In the very early beginnings and when Overwatch released, projectiles has larger hitboxes than their hitscan counterpart, because the development team decided that, okay, because hit scans are, immediately hit and very consistent, and projectiles have very slow projectile speed back then, we will give larger hitboxes so it feels more rewarding and to kind of balance it out, which a lot of people didn't like, as well, it didn't feel like there was actually skill involved. It felt like it was very inconsistent spamming that got you kills. And therefore, in Season 2, when this rolled around, Hanzo got a very big change to him and a very big buff. Hanzo will now experience a 30% decrease while aiming, formerly 40%, so a faster movement speed while he is, fully charging up his bow. Maximum projectile speed has been increased by 30%, and arrow size has been reduced by 33%. And this was huge. It meant that Hanzo now had far more skill to him and was far more consistent if you were good with him, increasing his skill floor and skill ceiling for that matter. And what that did was that, well, in Apex Season 1 and in the Overwatch World Cup 2016, we saw a lot of Hanzo play. And again, Apex Season 1, for those who don't know, Apex was the kind of the biggest tournament, kind of the cream of the crop for Overwatch back then, hosted in Korea, with teams like Envious even being there, and I do believe Envious won the very first season of Apex. And this was kind of like some of the best players from around the world right now playing this new competitive game Overwatch. Before Overwatch League even was there, that was Apex, and Hanzo was played back then and also in the Overwatch World Cup 2016. One of the things that happened in the same season on November 15, 2016 was the dreaded all ultimate cost has been increased by 25% for all heroes, which really hit hard on heroes like Genji and Mei, due to them being very reliant on their ultimates to really have a huge carry potential, but not impacting Hanzo as much due to the fact that he had Scatter Arrow, which was a very big one-shot mechanic, and because he was relying so much more on his arrows and scatters, his ultimate nerf from him didn't impact him as hard as other heroes that were relied far more on their ultimates. In Season 3, which for a lot of people is known as the World of Tank meta, we did continue to see Hanzo being played. He was played in Apex Season 2 in January 2017. And I also, and this kind of took me some time to kind of find, he was played in a game that I remember watching, which was East Wind versus NRG. A lot of former, current and also former Overwatch League pros you can see in this game playing. Here Mendo, which at the time I do believe was playing for C9, but was somehow subbing or helping NRG in the time as a projectile DPS, is playing Hanzo. And it's very, very fun to see him using the Scatter Arrow back then, which at the time was really strong. As soon as he got a projectile speed increase, this is where we started seeing Hanzo being more and more played due to Scatter Arrow being a very strong ability. And you can see right now on the screen, this is a tournament footage of me. I'm playing in, I do believe it's first division in the Telenor League, and you can see how strong the Scatter Arrow is, where I can walk up behind the Ryan from Hotel, and I can drop a Scatter Arrow into him, and I'll almost immediately one-tap him. That was the strong thing and the scary thing of playing against Hanzo. You had giant sonar arrows that you could put on corners and bounce them into houses if people were playing there, shoot them at the feet of the enemy to almost one-shot tanks, doing the tanks are problem pushing you, and you could also one-shot squishy DPSs, and if not, then you could shoot your arrows directly at their hand. This was both for the frustration of the recipient that would die, and also sometimes the frustration for Hanzo players, as the Scatter Arrow could feel very inconsistent from time to time, sometimes one-tapping, and sometimes just bouncing randomly around the enemy team, doing absolutely almost no damage, which we will see, of course, getting fixed later on. In Season 4, this was kind of known as the start of dive meta. It was teams like Rogue and so on was really playing dive a lot, and this was, of course, start to the Tracer Genji dive meta. Also, some Widow played at the time, but from the competitive scene, Hanzo wasn't played that much due to the fact that he is, at the time, a very immobile DPS, a very strong, damage-wise, but when the tanks can fly over your Scatter Arrows, matrix your Scatter Arrows, and dive you from multiple directions with very fast-moving DPSs and having deflect and so on, the Hanzo becomes very unplayable, as they can very quickly isolate him and kill him without him being able to resist that much. Widowmakers, however, was played at the same time, and a Widowmaker could easily outrange the Hanzo in consistency of duels, and had better mobility, could keep longer distances and grapple away, where Hanzo had absolutely no mobility at this time outside of wall climb. And due to that, we saw a nerf, or a buff, more correctly, to Hanzo to make him fare a little bit better in the current meta. The buff sounds as so: remove the attack cooldown from Hanzo's wall climb ability, allowing him to engage with enemies immediately after finishing climbing. His Storm Bow increased charge speed by 10%, giving him faster fire rate, and charged arrows now maintain their charge after wall climbing provided the button is continuously held. Doing that, you could finally charge shot, climb up to high ground, and release that shot. Doing that, it was easier to deny and fight for high ground control, made him far more viable to reclaim high grounds from divas and other heroes, and take the initiative and being a more aggressive pick. In Season 5, we did start seeing some double sniper, which would carry over later, meaning Hanzo, of course, was played due to buffs in Season 4, gave him a little bit better flexibility. In Season 6, which was the start of Mercy meta, which started September 19, Hanzo was actually played quite a lot. He was still struggling against dive, logically, but because of his one-shot, the logic was that, okay, if we can just one-shot people, we'll get out the res earlier. So she has 3 reses, let's get as many one-shots up, because strong ultimates like Dragon Blade doesn't really matter at this point, because every time we pop it, we burn something that we have spent a lot of time on building, and they will just immediately res it by, pressing E. And at that point, we saw Hanzo being played together with Widow, because pick potential was much more important for a lot of teams than stuff like just insane ultimates. In Season 7, Mercy was still meta, and the meta, was swapping around between playing some Death Ball, playing a little bit of Bunker, playing some Dive. In Season 8, which is when the Overwatch League started, we do see him play. We did see him play in the very first season of Overwatch League. For a long time, he was playing mainly for his Grab Dragon combo in the Grab Dragon meta, which some people remember probably with almost frustration. As this happened that you could damage boost a Hanzo Dragon Strike arrow, and at that point, if this was hitting a Graviton, for example, it could kill anyone for like a 200 HP hero, even though they were inside Transcendence, because damage would outdo Transcendence, which is and has been the best and the biggest counter for Graviton. And this did that some teams were forced to pop both Sound Barrier and Transcendence to keep themselves alive in a Graviton, when all they needed to do was to damage boost the Dragon Strike. And this actually lasted for a while until they removed the fact that they could just damage boost the Dragon Strike. As when that happened, there was very little reason to play him over other stuff, and of course, because of changes later on, this also did that Hanzo was faded out much more. In Season 9, Dive is back. Widow is played quite a lot. People are starting to know how to play against Hanzo and so on, and pushing him back a little bit, and Widow started to become a very dominant pick. In Season 10, he gets his rework, finally. As an inconsistent hero, or a hero where Scatter Arrow is frustrating to play against and can be frustrating to also use, low mobility and so on, this was fixed by Blizzard and increasing his skill ceiling and his potential even more. Hanzo's Stormbolt projectile speed was increased from 85 to 100. His Sonic Arrow cooldown was decreased from 20 seconds to 12 seconds, so you could shoot it faster, but his duration on the Sonic Arrow was decreased from 10 seconds to 6 seconds, and the radius decreased from 10 meters to 7 meters, doing that it's smaller, lasts for shorter, but you can use it more to cover angles for longer times. His launch ability was finally given to him, so he finally had some ability to deal with dive and when he was getting pushed, so he could disengage or engage aggressively past shields with this launch ability. Where essentially if you just press the jump key while in air, you would leap horizontally. Also getting his Storm Arrow, where it replaces Scatter Arrow, rest in peace Scatter Arrow, and was replaced by Rapid Fire, where you could fire up to 6 arrows that dealt reduced damage, but are always fired at full power, which essentially gave him far better shield break. And for a lot of people, this was a buff to Hanzo. Even though Scatter Arrow was removed with new tank, it was viewed upon a buff because this gave him flexibility. He was finally flexible. You had shield, he could break it. You had tanks, he could nuke them. DPSs, he could also do them far faster, as it wasn't just about duking one Scatter Arrow now. And because of his mobility, he could disengage and engage far more aggressively, take high grounds, and because of the previous, you can charge your bow and climb, you can aggressively climb up and down from high grounds and play far more for high ground control. So this was a very big buff, and we did see this. In the Overwatch World Cup in 2018, Hanzo was played a little bit more, and he was picking up steam in the rank ladder until GOATS happens. In Season 13 and so on, we started seeing more and more GOATS being played. It was kind of hinted at a little bit in Season 12, but in Season 13, 14, and 15, we saw GOATS being played and very little Hanzo played due to that. Even though on the rank ladder, Hanzo could be a good counter to GOATS. High ground control, shooting down on them, a lot of damage, Dragon Strike, AoE damage, right? Could be used against the GOATS, but in the competitive scene, GOATS could just mow through your team before the Hanzo felt like he could do anything. And at that point, it didn't matter if he was alive alone, because you had already lost a team fight. That happened until the Canggu Hunters. The Canggu Hunters in something like Season 16 played quad DPS, where Hanzo, and they were not of course the only team that was adapting this meta later on, where Hanzo was used in this heavy DPS comp to break shields, deal a lot of damage off angle because he was so good alone, Sonic Arrow where the enemy team was hiding or about to push from, and Dragon Strike and Teamfight to split or slow down the enemy offensive GOATS. And this was a renewed side, and we could finally see Hanzo being played in the pro meta, and of course also because of that picked up more and more steam, where some people even called him overpowered, where he later would get a nerf to his Rapid Fire, reducing his shots from 6 all the way down to 5, because Rapid Fire was a very strong ability to just nuke anything from shields to tanks to supports and DPSs. In Season 17, Bunker arrived. Hanzo on a competitive side point, and of course in Season 18 we're now playing a lot of double shield. Hanzo from a competitive side point isn't played that much, and there are arguments for why he could be viable. On the rank ladder he's still really good, and you can still play him very effectively against double shields, as he's one of the better DPSs against it. However, most professional teams are playing Reaper, Mei, Doomfist, and Pharah, all of those which could do the job of a Hanzo much better, as Hanzo will burn too much time breaking shields, and the engage of the enemy team can be so fast and so devastating that again, the Hanzo won't have time to kill them, and it will be very difficult for him to take duels against them, where essentially just putting a Hanzo player at a disadvantage. And then the argument from the pro players is, as always, why play this difficult here when you can play Reaper or Doomfist, which is much easier to get value out of on the competitive scene. But he still played. And as a recap, this is, as you can see, he was kind of shunned upon in the early seasons, and he was still had a lot of bias to him, but we start seeing him getting played in Season 2, and all the way on the competitive scene, we are getting him seen almost every single meta for a long time. Some people, you know, in the peak of GOATS meta, not playing him just because GOATS were really forced on servers, but outside of that, on the competitive rank ladder, if you skip like Season 13, 14, and 15, he's been a viable pick in the competitive rank ladder for a very, very long time, either because of Scatter Arrow or because of Rapid Fire. And on the competitive scene, as a pro meta scene, we did see him getting played all the way from Season 2, and as you know, early as Season 16, where we are seeing Hanzo being played, where we saw Hanzo being played more and more due to quad DPS. So that's the history of Hanzo from patch notes on the competitive ladder and also in pro games. I hope you guys like like this. And as always, thank you so much, Nicole. Back to you.
So if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a thumbs up, subscribe to Jonal via the link down below in the description, subscribe here, and make sure to leave a comment on which hero you'd like to see a video like this for next down below. But either way, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.